10 shocking celebrity Ozempic transformations that went too far of 2026. What if the most jaw-dropping transformations in Hollywood weren't about discipline, dedication, or willpower at all? What if behind every stunning red carpet reveal, every "I just changed my lifestyle" interview, and every suspiciously rapid before and after, there was a needle? In 2026, the secret is out. And some of these stories didn't just go far, they went too far. From a global icon who admitted she'll be on this drug for life, to a beloved television personality who looked in the mirror and genuinely didn't recognize herself. These are the 15 transformations nobody is giving you the full truth about. We did the research. We verified the facts.
It is an honor to be
and
here
what
tonight
we found
celebrating
will change
the very
how
best
you see
in global
celebrity
excellence.
culture forever.
We have one more very
Hit
special
subscribe
award
and
to
turn on
present.
notifications
It is an honor
because
to be
hidden
here tonight
celebrity
celebrating
stories
the
is
very
where the
best in
real
global
story
excellence.
begins.
We have
Let's
one
get
more
into
very
it.
special award to present.
Oprah Winfrey. Few stories in modern American culture carry the weight, literally and figuratively, of Oprah Winfrey's decades-long battle with her own body. Since 1988, when she appeared on national television hauling a wagon of animal fat to represent the 67 pounds she had lost through a liquid fast, the public had claimed ownership of her figure in a way that was relentless and unforgiving. Every fluctuation became a headline. She invested $43 million in Weight Watchers in 2015, lending her name to the idea that discipline alone was the answer. Then came 2023, and a confession that quietly demolished 35 years of that narrative. Oprah confirmed to People magazine that she had been prescribed a GLP-1 weight management medication under full medical supervision. She declined to name the specific drug. What she named instead was something far more consequential. Obesity is not a personal failure. It is a complex, chronic medical condition shaped by biology, genetics, and hormonal factors beyond willpower. For a woman whose brand rested on the opposite premise, those 12 words were structural demolition. The medical community applauded. The American Medical Association had classified obesity as a chronic disease since 2013. Oprah was finally saying publicly what physicians had argued for a decade. Critics, however, pointed to something uncomfortable. Her WW International shares had declined over 70% between 2021 and 2024. The pivot toward pharmaceutical treatment arrived at a financially convenient moment for someone who had spent years monetizing the willpower narrative she was now abandoning. By December 2025, Oprah had hardened her position, describing her GLP-1 use as a lifetime commitment and stating plainly, "I've proven to myself I need it." The transformation in her appearance was visible and significant. But the more profound shift was ideological. A 72-year-old woman, after 35 years of public struggle, finally stopped fighting her own biology and started working with it. Whether that liberation is accessible to viewers paying $900 to $1,300 monthly without insurance remains the most uncomfortable question her platform has yet to fully answer. Whoopi Goldberg. Karen Elaine Johnson, the woman the world knows as Whoopi Goldberg, has defied categorization for 40 years. Her 1984 one-woman Broadway show launched a career that accumulated an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar for Ghost, and Tony Award, making her one of only 18 people in history to achieve full EGOT status. She has outlasted trends, network executives, and co-hosts across 2 decades on The View. She approaches personal health with the same unsentimental directness she brings to everything else, which is precisely why her March 2024 disclosure landed with such unusual impact. After wrapping the 2021 film Till, Goldberg confronted a number she had not anticipated: her weight had climbed to nearly 300 pounds. The accumulation had been gradual, driven by metabolic deceleration in her late 60s, hormonal shifts, and demanding production schedules spanning decades. "I saw myself on screen and thought, that's a lot of me," she told The View co-hosts. No self-pity, no dramatic buildup, just recognition. She began taking Mounjaro, tirzepatide, a dual GIP and GLP-1 receptor agonist with FDA approval for chronic weight management under the brand name Zepbound since November 2023. In the SURMOUNT-1 clinical trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine, participants on the highest tirzepatide dose lost an average of 22.5% of body weight over 72 weeks. Currently the strongest outcome data of any FDA-approved weight management pharmaceutical. Goldberg confirmed her use on air without ceremony, without a prepared statement, and without a photographer present. She framed the decision in purely metabolic terms. A body in its 7th decade required tools appropriate to where it actually was, not where it had been at 40. No tearful confession followed. No magazine spread, just a 70-year-old EGOT winner being honest about biology on morning television. In the performative theater of celebrity weight disclosure, that complete absence of performance was, paradoxically, the most striking choice she could have made. Amy Schumer. Long before Ozempic became the word everyone in Hollywood was pretending not to know, Amy Schumer had already tried it, suffered through it, quit, tried a second formulation, suffered again, and then gotten on a microphone and told the entire story without softening a single detail. That sequence began in 2022. Schumer began injecting semaglutide. The scale moved fast, 30 pounds gone within weeks. Numerically, it was exactly what the drug promised. The physical reality was something else entirely. She described it to Howard Stern in January 2025 as being bedridden, a precise word from someone whose livelihood requires touring, filming, and performing at full output. The nausea was not the mild queasiness clinical trial language describes as gastrointestinal adverse events. It was incapacitating. The fatigue was total. Most significantly, she was unable to engage physically with her then 4-year-old son Gene, unable to throw a ball, chase him around a room, be present in the way a parent needs to be. That specific detail became the breaking point. She stopped. She later attempted Wegovy, the 2.4 milligram weekly semaglutide formulation approved by the FDA in June 2021 specifically for chronic weight management. The side effect profile returned with equivalent severity. She stopped again. Both decisions were medically coherent. Gastrointestinal adverse effects occur in 30 to 44% of patients in semaglutide trials, and for a meaningful subset, the functional impact is simply incompatible with daily life. What elevated her experience beyond personal anecdote was the public reckoning she initiated afterward. On Watch What Happens Live in 2023, she delivered the most quoted line of the entire Ozempic cultural moment. "Everyone has been lying, saying smaller portions. Shut up, you're on Ozempic." Precise, funny, and devastatingly accurate. A direct challenge to the collective fiction Hollywood had been maintaining for 2 years. From someone who tried the drug, failed on it twice, and gained nothing from the admission, it carried a credibility no carefully managed press release could manufacture. Chelsea Handler. The most revealing aspect of Chelsea Handler's connection to semaglutide is not that she took it. It is that she took it without fully understanding what she was taking. That distinction, once she articulated it publicly on the Call Her Daddy podcast in early 2023, exposed a corner of celebrity medicine that had been operating quietly and without scrutiny for years. Handler had been seeing a physician specializing in anti-aging and longevity medicine. a category of concierge healthcare that has expanded significantly among high-income patients in Los Angeles and New York. These practices offer comprehensive hormonal and metabolic optimization protocols incorporating testosterone, metformin, peptides, and increasingly GLP-1 receptor agonists, framed around metabolic health and cognitive longevity rather than weight loss specifically. Her doctor offered semaglutide within this broader wellness context. The word Ozempic, by then generating significant cultural noise, was apparently not central to the consultation. "I didn't realize I was on Ozempic," Handler said. "He just gave it to me." She took several doses. Nausea arrived within days. Fatigue followed. She discontinued before any significant physical change occurred and moved forward, describing the episode not as a scandal, but as a lesson in the gap between prescription and informed consent. Her account spotlighted something the medical community had been slow to address. GLP-1 prescribing within concierge anti-aging medicine operated under markedly inconsistent disclosure standards. Patients receiving semaglutide as part of longevity protocols were not always clearly informed they were taking the same compound driving nationwide shortages of diabetes medication, a shortage that, by 2023, had left type 2 diabetics unable to access their prescribed treatment. Handler did not frame this as malpractice. She framed it as a conversation the industry needed to have about transparency, language, and the responsibility embedded in prescribing drugs whose cultural identity had entirely separated from their medical one. In doing so, she accidentally became one of the most important voices in the entire Ozempic conversation, not through transformation, but through honesty about confusion.
Rebel Wilson. The chronology of Rebel Wilson's physical transformation is almost always misrepresented, and the misrepresentation matters. In January 2020, she publicly announced her year of health. Over the following 18 months, she shed approximately 77 pounds, reaching her target weight of 165 pounds by late 2020 through daily structured hiking, high-protein nutritional restructuring developed with a specialist, elimination of alcohol, and intensive therapeutic work addressing the emotional underpinnings of her eating behavior. "I had to understand why I was reaching for food during stress," she told Vogue Australia. No pharmaceutical intervention was part of this phase. The transformation that generated global headlines was achieved through sustained behavioral change alone. This matters because the Ozempic chapter arrived separately in 2023, under circumstances that received significantly less media attention despite being arguably more medically interesting. Wilson confirmed to the Sunday Times that she had tried semaglutide after a fertility specialist advised her that further weight management would improve outcomes during IVF treatment. The framing was clinical, not cosmetic, a pharmaceutical tool deployed in service of a reproductive health goal at physician recommendation. She was also using it defensively to protect territory already won through years of hard work. Maintaining significant weight loss is statistically harder than achieving it. Studies consistently demonstrate that without ongoing intervention, the majority of individuals who lose substantial weight regain a significant portion within 2 to 5 years due to metabolic adaptation and hormonal counterregulation, the body actively defending its previous set point. By mid-2024, Wilson had reportedly returned to microdosing a GLP-1 agent as a long-term maintenance strategy specifically to counteract this biological pressure. That maintenance use, low dose, ongoing, not aimed at further loss but at preventing regain, is clinically documented but rarely discussed openly because it lacks the dramatic narrative arc that generates coverage. Rebel Wilson's story, told with full chronological accuracy, is not a transformation story. It is a maintenance story. And the distinction reveals something that headlines consistently miss. Losing the weight was one battle. Defending it against biology permanently is an entirely different war. Meghan Trainor. When All About That Bass reached #1 in 58 countries during the summer of 2014, Meghan Trainor was 20 years old and had inadvertently rewritten the rules of what a pop star was permitted to look like commercially. The song was an explicit, deliberate rejection of the body standards governing mainstream music. She spent the following decade building a career partly anchored to that cultural position, that dimensions did not determine worth, and that industry scrutiny of women's bodies was something to be named and challenged rather than quietly accommodated. By 2025, she stood at the center of precisely the conversation she had spent years pushing back against. The difference this time was medical. After welcoming her second son Barry in July 2023, Trainor was managing the metabolic aftermath of gestational diabetes, a condition she had developed during the pregnancy. Gestational diabetes does not resolve cleanly at delivery. It significantly elevates lifetime risk of type 2 diabetes and frequently produces postpartum insulin resistance that standard dietary adjustments cannot adequately address. For patients in this metabolic situation, GLP-1 medications are not primarily weight loss tools. They are targeted interventions addressing glucose dysregulation at a hormonal level. Trainor began Mounjaro alongside a registered dietitian, a personal trainer, and structured nutritional changes. In March 2025, following intense media attention after her appearance at the Billboard Women in Music Awards, she published a direct statement to her 18 million Instagram followers. "I've worked with a dietitian, made huge lifestyle changes, started exercising with a trainer, and yes, I used science and support. Shout out to Mounjaro." Her husband, Daryl Sabara, confirmed he had joined her on the same medication regimen, a detail they discussed openly on their shared podcast in April 2025. The frustration embedded in her disclosure was pointed and entirely legitimate. "It's disheartening that questions were focused on my body instead of a decade of hard work." The woman who spent her 20s arguing that bodies should not define careers spent her 30s discovering that the argument requires constant, exhausting renewal. Sharon Osbourne. Sharon Osbourne has survived things that would have ended most careers permanently. She rebuilt Ozzy Osbourne's commercial standing from near collapse in the early 1980s into one of rock's most durable franchises. She managed her own colon cancer diagnosis in 2002, breast cancer in 2012, and a stroke in 2021. She has been fired from television, rehired, fired again, and remains at 73 one of the most recognizable media figures across 2 continents. She has never requested sympathy and has rarely received it unearned. Her account of semaglutide is the most cautionary on this list, and the one most precisely indexed to this video's title, because the drug worked exactly as intended, and that was the problem. Sharon confirmed publicly in 2023 that she had been taking semaglutide for weight management. At 5 feet 2 inches, she carried significantly less absolute mass than taller users, meaning the same percentage reduction represented a far more visually dramatic change. She lost more than 30 pounds. The rate outpaced her ability to adjust. "I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself," she told the Mirror in 2024. "I didn't want to look this thin." Photographs circulated widely in the British press prompted genuine public concern about her health. She discontinued the medication. What followed was physiologically predictable, but personally difficult. Without the hormonal appetite signaling semaglutide had been providing, hunger regulation did not simply restore to its pre-medication baseline. Research on GLP-1 discontinuation consistently shows average regain of approximately 2/3 of lost weight within 12 months of stopping, because the underlying biology driving weight gain remains entirely unchanged. Sharon navigated that regain publicly, discussing it with the same bluntness she had brought to the initial disclosure. Her experience does not indict Ozempic. It illuminates a critical gap between clinical trial averages and individual bodies, and the essential importance of sustained, personalized medical supervision, not just at the point of prescription, but throughout the entire arc of treatment, including discontinuation.
James Corden. For 8 seasons on The Late Late Show, 2015 to 2023, James Corden redefined the possibilities of American late-night television from a distinctly British perspective. Carpool Karaoke generated billions of cumulative YouTube views and became one of the most imitated formats in modern entertainment. He returned to London in 2023 to raise his 3 children closer to family. In 2024, during a podcast conversation that attracted considerably more attention than he may have anticipated, he confirmed he had trialed Ozempic and delivered an assessment of the experience that was more clinically precise than almost anything else being said publicly about the drug. Corden did not report dramatic weight loss. He did not describe a life-changing transformation. He described, in ordinary language, a specific limitation. Semaglutide had suppressed his appetite while he was taking it, but it had not altered the underlying cognitive and emotional patterns that had governed his relationship with food across decades. When the pharmaceutical appetite suppression was present, it helped. When it was absent, the established patterns reasserted themselves without modification. This observation maps precisely onto what behavioral medicine specialists had been publishing in clinical literature. GLP-1 medications act on hypothalamic and brainstem receptors to reduce food noise, the persistent neurological preoccupation with eating that many patients with obesity describe as a near constant cognitive burden. What they do not address pharmacologically are the behavioral, emotional, and associative dimensions of eating behavior, the connections between food and stress relief, comfort, celebration, and identity built over a lifetime. The Obesity Medicine Association's clinical guidelines consistently recommend pairing GLP-1 therapy with structured behavioral intervention, precisely because the medication and the psychology address fundamentally different layers of the same problem. Corden described the gap between those layers without clinical terminology, but with considerable accuracy. His willingness to characterize the outcome as incomplete rather than transformative contributes something genuinely valuable to a cultural conversation overwhelmingly dominated by success narratives, a grounded, honest account of what happens when pharmaceutical appetite suppression meets unaddressed psychological history. Jim Gaffigan. 30 years of stand-up comedy built on one recurring premise. Jim Gaffigan's appetite is bottomless. He knows it is excessive, and he finds the excess funnier than the shame. Hot Pockets, Airport Cinnabon, the specific psychology of eating a second dessert in secret. He weaponized his own hunger into a comedic identity that audiences across America recognized because they shared it, generating tours that consistently sold out major arenas and establishing him as one of the highest-grossing clean comedians in the country throughout the 2010s. His 2014 Netflix special, Mr. Universe, premiered directly to streaming before that model had become standard. His relationship with food was not just material, it was his contract with the audience. That history is precisely what made his November 2024 People magazine interview so genuinely striking. Gaffigan confirmed he had lost more than 50 pounds on Mounjaro, tirzepatide, under full physician supervision. He had begun the medication with authentic skepticism, genuinely unconvinced that any drug could override an appetite he had spent decades treating as immovable. The medication disproved that assumption by addressing hunger at the neurological level rather than requiring him to override it through willpower.
Tirzepatide activates both GLP-1 and GIP receptors simultaneously, a dual mechanism that clinical data from the SURMOUNT program demonstrated produces meaningfully stronger appetite suppression than single-receptor GLP-1 agonists alone, with average weight reduction of 15 to 22.5% across dosage groups over 72 weeks. The motivational framing he chose was deliberate and specific. Not aesthetics, not career pressure, but fatherhood. As a father of 5, his youngest was 11 at the time of disclosure, he described a health calculation oriented entirely around physical longevity. "I want to still be moving when they need me," he said. By March 2026, he confirmed on the Glass Half Full podcast that he remained on Mounjaro in a maintenance capacity, not to lose additional weight, but to sustain the eating patterns the transformation had required. For a man who built his career on surrendering joyfully to appetite, that sustained daily commitment to managing it represents a transformation the comedy specials never fully captured.
Jonathan Van Ness.
Jonathan Van Ness arrived on global screens through Netflix's Queer Eye reboot in February 2018, and immediately distinguished the show's new iteration through an emotional register that its predecessor had rarely attempted. As grooming expert, they brought to each episode something that transcended hair and skincare: permission. The permission to exist fully, to be seen without apology, to occupy exactly as much space as necessary. The show collected 12 Emmy Awards across its first 4 seasons. Van Ness became one of its defining presences and one of the most followed non-fiction personalities on social media globally. Behind that presence was a person managing a reality far more complex than any television format could contain. In 2019, ahead of their memoir, Over the Top, Van Ness disclosed publicly that they were HIV positive, a diagnosis received in 2017. The book also addressed childhood sexual abuse, addiction recovery, and a history of disordered eating that had shaped their relationship with their body from adolescence onward. These disclosures were not made for spectacle. They were made because Van Ness had reached a decision point. Performing a version of themselves that concealed the full picture was a form of ongoing damage they were no longer willing to sustain. The October 2025 TikTok addressing their GLP-1 use followed the same internal logic. In 2023, they experienced a health scare serious enough to require a colonoscopy. The results came back clear. In the aftermath, they made a deliberate choice. If nothing was severely wrong internally, they were going to address how they felt metabolically and physically. They began a GLP-1 medication under physician supervision, connecting the decision explicitly to managing compulsive eating patterns rooted in their documented history of disordered eating. That connection reflects genuinely emerging clinical science. Research published between 2023 and 2025 has investigated whether GLP-1 receptor agonists may reduce compulsive behaviors beyond eating, including alcohol use and substance cravings, through action on central reward pathways. The evidence base remains early, but is substantively growing. Jonathan Van Ness described the lived experience of exactly what that research is attempting to measure: a pharmaceutical intervention that quieted something years of therapy had not fully reached. In a conversation saturated with before and after aesthetics, that framing cuts through to something that actually matters. 10 celebrities, 10 different stories, but one question that ties them all together, and nobody in Hollywood wants to answer honestly. Oprah called it a lifetime commitment. Sharon Osbourne said it went too far. Amy Schumer was bedridden. James Corden said it didn't fix the real problem. And yet, the prescriptions keep climbing, the transformations keep shocking, and the before and after photos keep going viral. So here is what we want to know. Is this genuine medical progress? Powerful tools finally giving people control over a biological condition they never chose? Or is this a new kind of pressure, dressed up in clinical language, pushing celebrities and the millions who follow them toward a pharmaceutical standard nobody asked for? The conversation isn't over. It's just getting started. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want the stories Hollywood tries to keep quiet, you already know where to find them. Hidden Celebrity Stories. Subscribe, because the real story is never the one they tell first.